Welcome back, and now let's settle for the details. Cocoa Board has advanced more than 1 billion cedis as payment to license buying companies as far this week. This is part of effort to settle debt owed these companies, which will go a long way to clear debt owed the cocoa farmers. Let's get onto Zoom and speak to the head of public affairs at Cocoa Board, Jerome Kweku-Sam, for more details on this development. Jerome, it's good to have you here with us in the marketplace. Now, please, can you give me a breakdown of these payments made this week, and why is it going to license buying companies but not the cocoa farmers?
Okay, so good afternoon very much. As we all know, at the last cabinet meeting, cabinet as part of the reforms and also some directives being given, cabinet decided or directed that Cocoa Board makes sale of the 50,000 metric tons, which Cocoa Board had taken delivery of. So subsequently, a decision was taken by management to sell those 50,000 metric tons. And then out of the sale that we have made, funds have been coming in for payment to be made to the LBCs. And also to your next question as to why not the farmers, Cocoa Board does not interface directly with the cocoa farmer. So the LBCs, or the license buying companies, they make pitches on behalf of Cocoa Board and then submit or deliver to Cocoa Board. So that is the process.
Now, when are you hoping to clear all the debt owed the farmers as well as the license buying companies?
Yes, so I think the contentious issue was the 50,000 metric tons, because we did indicate that the 530,000 metric tons, which already had been assigned to off-takers, monies had been coming in to be given to the LBCs. So that was not in doubt at all. In fact, the president for Licobar did confirm that money have been coming in for such. So what our focus now is on the 50,000 metric tons, which we had not made sale of, but I can confirm that we've sold them and monies have been coming. So we have started. I cannot be specific with the timelines as to today or tomorrow, but yesterday we were able to pay about 237 million cedis. And just today, this morning, we again made a payment of 854 million Ghana cedis. It is possible that even before close of day, funds will come in. So as and when funds come in, we make payment to the license buying companies for them to also be able to make payment to our gallant cocoa farmers. But the fact remains that Cocoa Board is highly committed to ensuring that the difficulty that we experience, we are not going to experience it again. And that brings us to the new financing model that is yet to be introduced to Parliament, where we shall be raising funds or bonds domestically for the purchase of old cocoa. That would deal with the issue of no liquidity within a particular crop year. So I think that we've made headway.
Great. Now we understand that from this Friday, Cocoa Board will start paying the revised producer price to the cocoa farmers. And can you give us more details on that? But we thought that all the beans have been already sold.
No, so none of our communication had suggested sale, because if you could remember, we did say that we made a projection of 650,000 metric tons for the 2025-2026 season. And out of this 650,000, 580,000 had been purchased. And out of the 580,000, 530 had been assigned, which meant that we had no money difficulty in relation to that 530,000. However, because we had not assigned the 50,000 due to the drastic reduction in price, that had become an issue that Cocoa Board was dealing with. So it's remained about 70,000 which Cocoa Board is expected to have, which Cocoa Board hadn't taken delivery of at all. So the new price that we did announce, or the minister did announce, is in relation to the 70,000 which Cocoa Board is yet to take delivery of. So none of our communique have we stated that we have purchased all the projected cocoa bean for 2025-2026. In none of our communique have we
Thank you for the clarity. Now, how is the output like for this year when it comes to production target and also concerns that we could witness some smuggling?
No, I beg to differ. We are not going to witness smuggling because smuggling largely is contingent on price difference, most especially between Ghana and its neighboring country, i.e. Cote d'Ivoire and also Togo. If you did go to Cote d'Ivoire today, news all over, I can quote Reuters, news from Reuters suggests that, the farmers have been complaining bitterly. So if on paper they have issued a communique that they are maintaining their price, why then are the farmers in Cote d'Ivoire complaining that their beans are not being bought? And if your beans are not being bought, then it means you're not going to get any money. So if there's going to be any smuggling, then we rather will be experiencing a reverse smuggling where the Ivorians would want to bring in their cocoa for what? For payments. So we would have to put in measures to ensure that we do not incur additional expenses or additional cost, because if you buy beans smuggled into your country, you also do so or purchase with the intent of what? Selling it. But if you should go and sell it, you are losing. Let me also put on record that as at last 2 weeks or so, when the finance minister made the announcement, the price has further reduced from the $4,200 to about $3,000 per ton. So meaning we've lost about $1,200 since the minister made the announcement. So it will never be in the interest of anybody to smuggle cocoa out of this country to Cote d'Ivoire, because you're not going to get any money for the cocoa you smuggle.
All right, Jerome, help us understand. By this Friday, how is the payment going to be done, hopefully?
No, so the payment, as and when we take delivery of what? Of the cocoa bean, that is where payment will be made. So if it becomes evident that the cocoa has been graded and sealed, and Cocoa Board has taken delivery, then of course the LBC that made the delivery to Cocoa Board would have to be paid for the produce or for the purchase that they've made. So until Cocoa Board takes delivery of that, you cannot say that payment will be made. And as I posited earlier, we do not interface directly with the cocoa farmer. So it is not Cocoa Board outfit that the farmer will come for the payment of a produce or a bean that they've sold to an LBC. That is not how the system works.
Thank you for the clarity. Now, finally, let's look at the party, basically the pay cut. How much are we hoping to save every month? And when will other reforms fully take off, concerning the reforms that are proposed by the finance minister?
So I have always been tentative about the amount of savings that we are going to realize out of the pay cut. I've been tentative about it, and that must be stated quite clearly, because we were expecting some information from the HR department as well as the Department of Finance. So after they have computed everything, that is where I can factually put out information that, at the end of every month, this is how much we are saving, and this is the calculation therein, so that at least it will bring some form of clarity. But it is important for us to not lose sight of the fact that a decision has been taken which has never been taken, in the lifespan of Cocoa Board, as well as its operations are concerned. So I wouldn't say that the new management needs to be commended, but at least it is a step to mitigating a challenge which we have inherited. Now, Your next question, I don't know, you asked two questions. One was in relation to the pay cut and
yes,
how much you are realizing, and then the other, if you could refresh my
basically,
memory.
yes, how much of a pay cut? I just asked you on that, and you said basically you have to take assessment of the various departments and how many people, but you can just give us an average, especially looking at how many workers or staff.
I spoke to JoyNews yesterday, and then I put a tentative figure out there that looking at it, we shouldn't be expecting anything less than maybe 3 to 5 million, because if we have about over 10,000 permanent staff and also having some contract staff of about 8,000 or so. So if you should put them together and then say that you have about 9,000 to be senior staff, and you are saving about 500 Ghana cedis or so per month on each individual's cut salary, then of course we should be looking in the region of 3 to 5 million. So that information I've already put out there.
All right. Thank you very much, Jerome, for speaking with us here on the marketplace. Now, moving on, the government has settled all arrears due in terms of SSNIT contributions to public sector workers ending last year. Director General of the State Pension Trust, SSNIT, Kwesi Afribani, disclosed this to Joy Business after engagement with employers in Tamale in the northern region.
The Minister of Finance and Government for the contributions that came in 2025. For the first time in many years, I don't recall the last time that in a particular year, all due contributions were paid by government. But in 2025, every month's due contribution, so you know you pay your contributions by 14th of the subsequent month. So December's contributions were not due by end of December. As at December, all due contributions that up to November had been paid. Even for December's that was due in January 2026, by December, government had earlier paid about 50%, and in 2026 has already cleared it. Government also in 2025 cleared outstanding contributions of 3 months worth 1,050 million cedis from 2024 arrears that were passed on to the new government. That was also paid by March. Government, however, still has obligations to the trust with regards to penalty payments. So with regards to penalty payments, yes, there are outstanding penalty payments dating back to several years that we are in conversations with the Minister of Finance on to agree on a structured plan to resolve that matter.
And what amounts are
the total? Like I said, there is no contribution arrears, but penalty arrears that we are having conversation on that dates back to several years up to 2024 amounts to close to about 48 billion.
Now let's get on phone and speak to the Executive Director of the Africa Center for Retirement Research, Abdullah Mashood, for more analysis on this development. Abdullah, it's good to have you here on the marketplace. Now, what will this payment mean to the operations of SSNIT?
Good afternoon, viewers. I think it's always exciting to be here. And first of all, let me say,
Abdullah, can you position yourself and speak up a bit for us?
First of all, I want to say it's a great operational capital, great important, such as employers, exercise. Yes, it is good to hear that government, the biggest employer, has simple.
All right, Abdullah, it seems we are struggling a little bit to get clarity, especially in terms of having access to your sound. And we'll get back to Abdullah for more insight on this development where SSNIT has cleared arrears owed pensioners. Now, we have more on this after this break. Stay tuned. Welcome back to the marketplace. Now to more business update. The Governor of the Bank of Ghana, Dr. Johnson Isiama, has cautioned commercial banks against excessive reliance on net interest income, warning that a changing interest rate environment could test the resilience of earnings across the industry. Addressing heads of banks in Accra, the governor noted that while interest income remains a core component of banking operations, overdependence poses risks.
comments come at a time when Ghana's monetary conditions are gradually normalizing, leading to tighter spreads and declining yields on government securities, traditionally a significant source of bank profitability. Dr. Johnson Esiama stressed that as the rate environment stabilizes, margins are likely to compress, making it imperative for banks to rethink their revenue strategies.
This review confirms that the sector remains viable and profitable. At the same time, it highlights structural features that merit reflection as we move into a more normalized macroeconomic environment. Financial intimidation remains modest, with loans accounting for less than 1/5 of total assets across the industry. Asset concentration in sovereign and central bank instruments also remains elevated. Most notably, approximately 68% of industry profitability continues to be driven by net interest income. Colleagues, there is nothing inherently problematic about net interest income. However, a high dependence on this increases sensitivity to interest rate cycles and sovereign exposure dynamics. So as margins compress in a normalizing rate of environment, earnings resilience will increasingly depend on your diversification, particularly through transactional banking, trade services, payments.
The remarks signal a strategic shift in regulatory expectation, with the central bank encouraging institutions to strengthen non-interest income streams and reduce concentration risk tied to sovereign instruments.
Now, the Deputy Finance Minister Thomas Nyarko says government is ready to direct investment in the tree crop sector to attract more private capital and boost production. He made this known at the Tree Crop Summit held at the Accra International Conference Center, where stakeholders gathered to discuss financing, sustainability, and growth in the industry.
Seeing the finance minister visiting some gold refineries in this country, we are also having a deliberate policy to process some of to refine some of our gold here internally, locally, so that we can get more resources from that. As we do all this, it is important that we pay attention to tree crops like oil palm. And so, seeing all of you gathered here, I see the desire, the support for this policy. Government is committed to de-risk investment in this. You see, if you want to encourage investment in oil palm plantation, because it takes a long time.
Away from that, the producer price inflation for January 2026 has declined marginally to 1.6% from 1.9% recorded in December 2025. This represents a 2.3 percentage point drop. The following report has more.
Published by the Ghana Statistical Service on February 18, 2026, showed that on a year-on-year basis, the ex-factory prices of goods and services increased by 1.6% between January 2025 and January 2026. The rate also showed 26.9 percentage points lower than the 28.5% recorded in January 2025. This shows a significant easing in producer price pressures over the past year. On a month-on-month basis, producer prices rose sharply by 3.3% in January 2026 compared to a contraction of 0.8% in December 2025, pointing to renewed short-term price momentum. Mining and quarrying, which carries the largest weight of 43.7% in the PPI basket, recorded a year-on-year inflation rate of 3.7% in January 2026, up from 3.3% in December 2025, representing a 0.4 percentage point increase.
Now, the Chief Executive Officer of Delect Finance, Joe Jackson, is urging businesses to move beyond comfort with recent macroeconomic stability and begin building resilience against future shocks. Speaking at the Ghana's Economic Outlook Forum organized by the Ghanaian German Economic Association, he cautioned that Ghana's economy remains highly vulnerable despite recent gains.
Chief Executive Officer of Delect Finance, Joe Jackson, at the Ghana Economic Outlook Forum, the country has achieved stability but not full recovery, warning firms to strengthen productivity, build liquidity buffers, and prepare for possible exchange rate and commodity price shocks.
Stability is not recovery. And all we have done is achieve stability. We haven't achieved resilience. And unfortunately, we have to say that whatever external shocks coming, they will hit us hard. Our economy is still very, very vulnerable. And we are subject to all manner of shocks going ahead. If there's any commodity price swing, we are in trouble. And it could be gold, cocoa, crude oil. Once the cedi weakens are there to balloon again, and it becomes a huge issue. Stability without productivity is temporary. If I'm a business
now, news coming through right now is that the majority in Parliament is currently holding a presser on concerning Ghana's cocoa update industry, the challenges and what government has decided to do. So we'll go straight to Parliament for that insight.
Sector. We have heard a lot of comments from our colleagues, and they have tended all of a sudden to pretend as though they are the people who love the people of Ghana, when Ghanaians were very clear that they were enemies of Ghana and didn't want them near the Flagstaff House anymore. The bottom line of all that has happened is that some amounts were owed to cocoa farmers, and the government took a decision to repay those monies so that the cocoa buying companies can settle those outstanding obligations. I'm happy to report to you that this morning the government has released 855 million for the purposes of paying those outstanding obligations. But permit me to say, ladies and gentlemen, that we have decided to introduce a number of reforms. But those reforms that we are introducing are reforms that are long overdue. The cocoa sector has been under enormous strain over the years, and we have pretended to be servicing cocoa farmers, when in fact what we have done is to destroy the vehicle that we are using to support the cocoa farmers. In February 2026, government initiated a comprehensive reset of Ghana cocoa sector to restore financial viability, rebuild confidence among cocoa farmers, and reposition cocoa as a disciplined commercial institution capable of sustaining national output and value addition. The need for reform arises from the cumulative impact of misalignment in pricing, excessive debt accumulation, operational inefficiencies, and structural weaknesses that intensified between 2017 and 2024 and culminated in severe financial strain for Cocoa Board. By January 2025, Cocoa Board indebtedness has reached approximately 32.9 billion Ghana cedis. Ladies and gentlemen, the sector also entered 2025 amid unprecedented global cocoa price collapse of roughly 76% between January 2025 and February 2026. The magnitude has never been seen in the last 3 decades of our life. These domestic and international shocks jointly necessitated structural reforms to Cocoa Board. there have been talk about forward sales and why forward sales may be the reason for where we are today. At the start of 2025 to 2026 cocoa season, Cocoa Board had forward sold approximately 530,000 tons, representing about 82% of the projected 650,000 tons of cocoa at an achieved average FOB price near 7,200 per ton. Only 18% to 20% of the projected sales remained unexposed to the spot sales that we were trying to manage with the forward sales. By contrast, the 2023-2024 season illustrated the risk of excessive forward commitments. 672,000 metric tons were contracted against an estimated 850,000 tons of projected output. So even though we're expecting to grow and harvest about 850,000, we have gone ahead to sell over 786,000 to unsuspecting buyers who didn't know that we don't have the cocoa. Actual production was only 448,000. But we signed a contract to sell almost 786,000. So we defaulted on those arrangements. And when you default on your forward sales agreements, there are implications, financial implications for the country. So, ladies and gentlemen, this overcommitment created costly rollovers that continue to burden Cocoa Board between 2025 and where we are now. So even though we had contracted to supply a lot more cocoa, we got only around 50% of what we contracted. So this government had to take over that additional overload with the financial implication for Cocoa Board when monies were not made available to finance those purchases. Cocoa Board entered 2025 with roughly 17.8 billion in loans plus significant operational liabilities. So loans alone was about 17.8 billion by the beginning of 2025. And if you add this to other obligations, you will soon come to realize that at this point, Cocoa Board was bleeding with an exposure of over 60 billion Ghana cedis. Certainly, that vehicle could not be sustainable and needed to be addressed. I just want to tell you something simple. You know, what is the name? If you have a basket in which you put water to drink and the bucket is leaking, do you fit the leak before you put water inside, or you continue to put the water inside hoping that some will be left for you to drink? Ehinana de konsuonabo obeso anu ansan wa sansuo guma na obese nsuo gum no wadwen se nyame bebo na nsuo na kem. You have 60 billion of somebody's money. It's not free money. You are not paying. And you are saying that we should continue to even go and borrow more. You know, maybe you don't listen to our people. These are people, even the common Bible, they read it in reverse. And these are the people advising us to go and add more debt when we cannot even pay 60 billion. And because we have kept quiet, somehow they think that these illogical arguments that they are advancing is what will save the people of Ghana. We are resetting the cocoa sector. And I will make you understand where we are by the close of this engagement. Ladies and gentlemen, Cocoa Board, I just want to take you through a couple of the reckless financial exposures that these people left for us. They borrowed 1.8 billion from Africa Development Bank. This government, in 1 year, will have paid down 1.2 billion of that money. The interest that have accrued on those Africa Development Bank loans is about 209.5 million. We have paid 165 million of that money. They had a 10-year Bank of Ghana loan, the principal of which was 1.3 billion when they left. We have since paid that money by converting it into equity to recapitalize Cocoa Board so that Cocoa Board is financially strong and relieve them of the burden of servicing those debts. The interest payment on that is about 65.7 million. Again, we have relieved Cocoa Board of this obligation by using it to recapitalize Cocoa Board and give Cocoa Board a better financial standing. The Ministry of Finance, that cocoa that they went and promised the people and took, you know why they were promising people that they can generate 850 metric tons? Because when they went to the market for the syndicated loan, they had to indicate that they are going to get receivables from 850,000 metric tons, so that the white man will be nodding and be giving the money. When they give them the money, they defaulted in paying all the money and had to go to the Ministry of Finance to borrow $70 million in bridge finance. Records show that the then Minister for Finance, Mohamed Amin Adam, had written couples of letters to remind them to make good that obligation. They failed. So even the money that they took, they couldn't pay all. They had to go and borrow to pay what they borrowed. The government of Ghana, in the wisdom of His Excellency John Dramani Mahama, the amount equivalent to about 1 million has been 1 billion has been converted to equity to improve the financial standing of Cocoa Board. That is the resetting that we are doing. Again, cocoa bonds totaling about 9.3 billion, they didn't pay. We have had to pay about 2 billion of that in this short period. Non-marketable bills from the Ministry of Finance that they didn't pay 3.7 billion. The whole of that money has been converted to equity to improve the financial standing of Cocoa Board. Other debts related to operations. Sometimes we take money, Cocoa Board takes money from local processors. There are companies in Ghana that process cocoa. So sometimes they pay Cocoa Board in advance to supply the cocoa. We took the money and didn't supply the cocoa. The government of Ghana have had to pay 741 million in John Mahama's term out of about 1.5 billion Ghana cedis. Evacuation and other operational bills of about 168 million, we have paid 36 million of that money.
Secondary evacuation of cocoa.
Yeah, secondary evacuation of cocoa. So you can see that the restructuring of Cocoa Board started long before the Minister for Finance announced the reforms, because we knew that Cocoa Board, where it is, needed to be revitalized, needed to be recapitalized, and needed to go through a stringent financial restructuring, which we are already pursuing to put Cocoa Board in good standing. Cocoa roads expenses. We inherited cocoa road commitments totaling about 26.5 billion Ghana cedis. Out of that money, we have done a review of the arrears and the expenditures involved, and 4.4 billion of that has been certified and rationalized and transferred to the Ministry of Roads to implement and conclude those transactions. We believe that the work of Cocoa Board is not to be constructing roads. Since they themselves are now struggling, it is time for us to wash their hands off cocoa roads and get the appropriate ministry Ministry of Roads and Highways to take over the construction of those roads. I would attach to you a list of those cocoa projects. In fact, it will surprise you to know that in 2017, 2018, 2019, and 2020, Cocoa Board made no allocation to construct roads. Yet, the government and Cocoa Board defied the orders of its board, which did not agree that they should construct roads. They ended up awarding roads to the tune of 1.4 billion in 2017, 14 billion in 2018-19, and then a further 5.8 billion even in the year of COVID. In the year of COVID, when they were roaming around with bowl in hand, they were still milking Cocoa Board to construct roads. But the worst of it is that Cocoa Board, in its own wisdom, did not approve allocation for the construction of roads. But they bulldozed their way and had those huge sums of money to award contracts. The end result is that we were now saddled with about 26.6 billion in road commitment at Cocoa Board. Certainly this cannot continue. It must stop at some point. The monies that they drew down from Africa Development Bank loan of 600 million, 250 million of it was not released by Africa Development Bank. But the 350 million that they took for pollination and the rest with a view to improving cocoa production rather resulted in a drop in cocoa production. So where did the money go? Clearly, they use pollination and the rest just to take money, irrigation, and all those things that will make Ghanaians believe that they are working. The money didn't go there. As a result of that, cocoa production rather plummeted after they spent those monies. Ladies and gentlemen, the matter before the people of Ghana is to whether to continue the business as usual and collapse Cocoa Board, Kojoto, like we collapse the bond market. You have forgotten DDP, right? It was the same thing they were doing. They only know how to borrow. In fact, in this country, we were told that they were better borrowers. They knew how to borrow. Not better construction or contractors of road. Not people who developed better education, but that they were better at borrowing. Unfortunately, they were better at borrowing, but not better at paying the loans. So in the end, they went to the world and said that we cannot pay. Because we cannot pay, we all have to take a haircut. And then on top of that, the capital market that they came to meet, they went there to give them a haircut too. And now they are saying that the capital market that they've sacked, they declared Ghana bankrupt. And they're asking us to go and borrow. From where? In the international capital market, when you are passing and you mention the name of Ghana, everybody covers his money. Oh, you're not aware? Well, I don't know. Do you understand? So we, as descendants of Ghana who have inherited a country that is known not to pay debt. So where are they asking us to go and borrow from? Can they lead us to where we left them that they could borrow and went and destroyed, so that we'll go back to them and borrow? Now, they will not give us money because you have collapsed the capital market. And nobody is willing to give us money. So even if we wanted to borrow, where? Must have do have money to give us. Or you are not involved in DDP. Pensioners, I saw some of them the other day, they were demonstrating at the ministry. So that is the situation that we find ourselves. Over procurement. While the board was saddled with a lot of debt and serious financial challenges, Cocoa Board continued to procure items as though it was Father Christmas. When Cocoa Board had 286,000 bales of jute sacks sitting at the port, they only went and cleared 91,000 of them and left the rest at the port. Meanwhile, they also had 75,000 bales of jute sacks. So add that to what is in the port. They had enough to last them another 3-4 years. But just a few days before they left office, they went and contracted and paid 48 million to bring in 80,000 bales of jute sacks. These are reckless people. If it was possible in the days that we were shipping people, these are people that we have to line up and tell cocoa farmers it is the conduct of these people that denied the government of Ghana the resources to properly take care of you at this point in time. So that we'll give everybody a cane. Cocoa farmers will ship you in tow. Then we will know who is at fault. But these are the type of people, because they can sing and dance more than everybody. Sometimes they tend to think that when they tell the same lie many times, it becomes the truth. If Ghanaians were not vigilant, I'm sure one day they would have told us that Psalm 23 has 118 verses. And that when you get to you get to 118, you don't proceed to 120. You rather come back to 20. Or is it 22? Yeah. But you people are very vigilant. You don't go and quote the Quran. You go and be entering space anyway. Look, Cocoa Board costs, as we speak now. Cocoa Board requires no less than 23 million Ghana cedis to finance its ongoing operations. But on top of that, we also know that that's in millions. As we speak now, Cocoa Board, in order for Cocoa Board to survive, we are looking at being able to raise working capital of over 30 billion Ghana cedis. That 30 billion is not to pay the 60 billion they've left. It is just to make sure that Cocoa Board can do lala sulala. 30 billion. So you can now understand. 30 billion. Cocoa Board doesn't deal with millions. 30 billion in working capital. Meanwhile, if you look at the accounts of Cocoa Board, you will notice that there's a big hole sitting there that needs to be addressed. The net equity of Cocoa Board is over 20 billion. In other words, is that not the case? Then they say, oh, go and borrow, go and borrow. That's the only thing they know. So, ladies and gentlemen, the reforms that we are introducing is to make sure that, one, we have properly restructured Cocoa Board financially and make sure that it has enough working capital to serve the people of Ghana, but also to manage the operations of Cocoa Board to make it very, very efficient. If you look at how much we need to spend on cocoa, the producer price of cocoa, the rate per ton is about 41,000, and that alone you need about 26 billion to buy the cocoa. Your buyer's margin, you will need about 3.4 billion to be able to pay the cocoa farmers. Your evacuation to get the cocoa to where you can sell and get the FOB price, we need about 456 million. In all, we need 30.7 billion in working capital for Cocoa Board to continue to operate the way it is supposed to operate. So having come to this, it is obvious to you that a good leader, having been faced with this, would have to take very difficult, far-reaching decisions. Is that not it? Eh? When you have diarrhea or you have a sore, do you rather go to the doctor who will tell you that, oh, it's all okay, don't worry, or you want a father who is stubborn enough to put hot water there so the wound will heal? Do you want the wound to heal so that you are healthy and can walk better? Or you want to continue to be massaging so that the wound will eat you up? So these decisions that we are taking, His Excellency John Dramani Mahama cannot be the enemy of the farmers that voted for him. But a good leader tells you that I know what will make you happy. But if I continue to pamper you in our situation, tomorrow I will not be there to even support you. So let us come back home, repair the vehicle, put the vehicle in good shape, then we can support the farmer and grow the sector and be able to give the farmer very good rates and very good sustainability. That is all we are doing. So the MPP doesn't love the people of Ghana more than His Excellency John Dramani Mahama. And they don't love farmers more than us. Farmers now mudi o musika na zia kada hono. Ana mo pe o myself. Huh? But you can understand them. Sometimes they very serious matter, they trivialize them. I heard somebody saying that Amakwena is going to fell a tree that was providing the oxygen for the whole of Kumasi. Anyway. So, ladies and gentlemen, the reforms are very clear. One, we want to undertake aggressive financial and structural restructuring of Cocoa Board, so Cocoa Board become financially capable of shouldering the burden that we as a nation has imposed on it. We are willing to take and absorb the excess burden that has been occasioned by allowing Cocoa Board to engage in non-core activities so that Cocoa Board can focus on core activities of cocoa. That is why we are taking over the cocoa rows for the Ministry of Roads, Honorable BoG and his people, to find a way to construct the roads in the cocoa growing areas. We are also aware that the mechanism that we are using to reward our farmers has inherent risk, and we need to address that in order that we can have certainty going forward in the pricing of cocoa. You cannot say that when you were selling cocoa for around $10,000 per metric ton, and you were paying the farmer about 3,500, 3,100. If today you have suffered over 76% drop in price, you will still be able to provide that kind of rate. Is it possible? It is not possible. So we need to make reforms to ensure that when the world prices are good, farmers get good rates. But even with what we have done, we are certain that farmers are still better off under His Excellency John Dramani Mahama than they were under the MPP. Is that not the case? Honorable Eric Opoku did a very simple analysis recently on TV. And you could see that the purchasing power parity of farmers has improved. With this amount of money now, which is lower than what they were getting, they are able to buy more packets of zinc than they were buying. Is that not the case? And cement. They are able to buy more zinc than they were buying. So what do farmers want? A prudent management of the economy that delivers value to them, or artificial increases in cocoa rates that doesn't get to the market? What do farmers want? So yes, farmers would have been happy to have more money, but that would have meant that in future Cocoa Board will not be available to support them. So those are the things that we are trying to put in place to solve the problem that has been occasioned by what we are going through. Cocoa Board net loss increased from 283 million to about 5.9 billion in 2024. This is the Mboka. From 280 something million. You are hoping that it will improve. Then you wake up and it is now 5.9. If you don't stop this bleeding, 2026, cocoa board loss will be heading towards 10 billion. And I don't think that is what we want. That is some people's money that is lost, and we need to make sure that we address that. The government support and debt absorption measures that the government acting through with the agency to resolve the cocoa board's financial challenges are all meant to make cocoa board a much stronger institution that can better support our farmers. Ladies and gentlemen, the reforms would include legislative reforms. A new bill will be brought here for us to fashion out cocoa board that is fit for purpose. And we do believe that when it gets there, our colleagues who are always praying that the NDC fails so that they can have the wildest dream of ever coming back after almost 50 years. They will support us on the floor. You remember they ran away from gold board. Huh? Today they are filing questions to ask about the entity that they ran away from setting up. You have an opportunity to pluck mango on the tree. You climb the tree, you don't pluck the mango. You get down and you are throwing stones for the mango to come down. These are the people. That's how they behave. They defy logic in every sense of the word. We would want to improve the mandate of cocoa board and restrict cocoa board from engaging in non-core activities so that they can better serve the people we want them to serve. We are hoping that all these reforms will restore cocoa board's financial sustainability and positive equity position. It will strengthen corporate governance and restore the investor confidence in cocoa board. Do you remember that investors were more comfortable to deal with cocoa board than to deal with government? Do you remember that? Yes. Only 3 years ago, investors were willing to give cocoa board 5% on dollar loans and give government of Ghana 11% on dollar loans. Today, cocoa board itself cannot even borrow 1 cedi. So we want to restore the confidence that the market had in cocoa board that made cocoa board able to find money to work the way they did. We also want to promote higher levels of domestic processing. His Excellency has said that he wants larger volumes of our cocoa to be processed domestically in order to provide employment to our people and increase our gross domestic product. And so that will be part of the reforms that will be implemented. We want to ensure that cocoa remains a viable and robust pillar in Ghana's economy. In conclusion, ladies and gentlemen, our interventions are guided by the conviction that a financial, resilient, and well-governed cocoa board is essential for the prosperity of millions of Ghanaians who depend directly and indirectly on cocoa, especially farmers in rural communities. We look forward to collaborating with Parliament and all stakeholders to produce a fit-for-purpose, viable cocoa board to serve the people of Ghana going forward. His Excellency John Dramani Mahama, as part of his reset, will leave cocoa board to the people of Ghana that Ghanaians will be proud of, not this shambolic cocoa board that we are currently struggling to heal. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Adongo. We open the floor for a few questions, but let me try to do the tree version. I will do a small summary for you. Abusiafo, the year coming in answer, and then 19th of February 2026, Cocoa Board at 554 million Ghana cedis. 854 million Ghana cedis. And the amount of cocoa phone. When actually was said, the biker said of cocoa na yedi carton, and no the betria border than an eden, and the cocoa phone. It's a buy a small can, a buy the soup and net and pay a year LBC no, and second sickle Mokotia cocoa phone. He said, dear Kenyan, but they would then cocoa crane, Nisika, and not Hiano. Into a buy to an amount we said, and a bought a buy a basso. But you say, Nianom Cassa, I don't know any forces, Tamane born was through, and Kebenya Sika, I train ya, Yanton Kukuna and Yesicano.